What's going on, you guys? I'm Brad Solo here today without Matt and Alec on the show, but I'm going to run through a couple things. We had the Stanley Cup final champion crown last night. Alec's still on vacation towards, I think, we'll be back middle end of this week, and Matt's still working a little bit, so we'll figure some things out. I'll be on vacation next week. Matt will be on vacation the following week, so we'll be in and out. We'll figure things out in terms of who's here, but we'll have shows for you guys. And like I said, we had last week we had the draft, NBA draft. We didn't get to that because me and Matt weren't here Friday, so I'll touch on that a little bit. Run through some baseball a little bit, and then we're going to start here with the hockey because last night we had the champions crowned. The Colorado Avalanche were crowned Stanley Cup champs last night. I know coming into this series, I mean, all three of us, especially at least on this show, we were talking about the matchup. How this is a matchup that the NHL should want because these were probably the two best teams all year. At least two of them, if they weren't the two best. Um, so that part of it was good. It was definitely entertaining. We got a deep series. It was a 6-game series. Colorado won. There were storylines that we talked about coming in, especially like I just said, the two teams being the best. But there were some other ones that kind of came about throughout the series in terms of, Colorado a couple years ago. I know that we've been talking about they've been building these last couple years. They've had heartbreaks in the playoffs, but they've been a team that a couple years ago, 5 years ago, I think they were saying last night on the broadcast that they were point wise the worst team in the league 5 years ago. So they built through the draft. They did a good job building through the draft. They had guys last night. I think Stamkos scored the first goal for Tampa Bay, and after that, it was just two goals from Colorado. I think I don't have the box score pulled up, but I think McKinnon had one of them. He's their ace, so he's one of the guys that got it going for them. And he had a good series. I mean, and hats off for Tampa because they were trying to after they go down 3-1 on Friday, trying to at least turn this thing around and try to force it to bring it to Game 7. Anything could happen in Game 7. We've seen teams come back from 3-1 deficits, not always win, especially in hockey, but teams that can push it to 7 games after trailing down 3-1. And they did their part Friday night, winning in Colorado. That's a tough place. We were trying to say all postseason long. It's a tough place to play there. It's a tough place to win there. And Tampa Bay, with their championship experience, they showed that they were capable of doing that. And I know coming back home after winning Game 5 to try to extend the series, try to push it to 6 games, which they did, try to push it to 7, which they couldn't do last night. It's kind of surprising to see them come home after doing that on the road, not being able to win at home. But hey, it's what Colorado's done all year. They've been the best team all year. Tampa they were trying to not only force this thing but trying to come back and win it. And I know they were trying hard, but we kept talking about all season, especially in this series, that it's been hard for them. Going on these big long Stanley Cup final runs they've been on the last 2 years and winning them. It takes a lot out of you, and I think they showed that these last couple games for a good part of the series as well that they just couldn't keep up with Colorado. They were the faster team, the younger team, and they were ready more than Tampa Bay was. And no discredit to Tampa Bay because I know they didn't win this year, but they've made the last 3 Stanley Cups. They won 2 of them. They lost this year. That still hasn't been done since the mid '80s with the Islanders and I think the Oilers. The last couple teams about 40 years ago to do that. So what they did hasn't been done a lot. And I think with Tampa Bay, you're a team looking at a team that they're experienced. They know, these situations they've been in this playoff run, and I know they were trailing early with Toronto in the first round, and then this series they had their situations with Colorado and some other series as well. But this is a team that's not going to go anywhere. I know, we'll see what happens financially with them, but this is a team that they have as long as they have their three with Vasilevsky and Stamkos and Kucherov and Palat and some other guys they have surrounding them. They're a team that's going to be okay. They were a team that this year, like I said, they had their struggles early on. We were questioning if they would even get back here. They found a way to do it, and they found a way to push this thing in 6 games. They're going to be okay. But if you're looking at a team like Colorado with the Avalanche, they're a team that can maybe make their own dynasty pretty soon because they got Cale Makar, a guy that just won the Conn Smythe Trophy last night. They got Nathan McKinnon, like I've been saying, I think is their best player, but Makar's been giving him a run for his money. He's going to be a star in this league. So they got guys that they can make their own dynasty as well. And I think when you're looking forward, they're coming. I think they're the 5th team in the last couple of decades that started the year out the favorite to win the Stanley Cup, and they did it. So I think next year, obviously, winning the Stanley Cup this year, they're going to come out as the favorite, as they should. And we'll see if they can repeat. I think it was good for hockey last night because I know you had baseball going on, but it's baseball. They play every day. So I know last night was pretty much the only thing going on. The matchup between these two teams, like I said, it's a good matchup going on, or it was a good matchup that we had for the Stanley Cup. And it was last night. There was the only thing on last night. I think a lot of people got to see hockey. I think a lot of people got to see how good of a sport it is, how entertaining it is, how how beautiful the Stanley Cup is. I know what we saw last night. That's the best moment in sports when not only that's the most story trophy in sports, but I know it might not be the best looking, but it's the best story or, trophy in sports in terms of the history behind it because all those people that have their names on it, all the great players that have their names on it. I know we heard Nathan McKinnon last night saying, he thought he had a good feeling they were going to win it last night when his room number in the hotel was 87 for Sidney Crosby. He loves Sidney Crosby. That's his idol, he said. So, and his name is on that trophy 3 times. So, having all these guys skate around with it, take turns and have their own moments with it, interviewing all these guys after it, talking about how much it means to them to hoist the Stanley Cup and having the team photos with it. It was really cool to see last night. It's anytime any team wins it, any championship in any sport, but any team who wins a Stanley Cup, and you see them skate around, have their moments with the Stanley Cup, talk about what they're going to do with it. I know people. That's a big question. I think reporters were asking players last night, "What do you plan on doing with the Stanley Cup? What's the thing you've always wanted to do with it?" A lot of people were saying just take pictures with it. Go on vacations with it, take it different places. I know that thing's been how many different places has long has been around, and a lot of players done a lot of great things with it. Party with it, drink adult beverages out of it. So we'll see what these players do with it. But I think, it's credit to Colorado winning last night. I think it was a team that, especially at least in the conference finals, we were talking about. At least I thought I was talking to Alec and Matt about it. That I thought, I didn't really think it mattered who came out of the East. I know I picked Tampa to win this series because they were defending champs, but I didn't think it mattered too much because I thought Colorado was just the best team all year, especially in the playoffs. They only lost 2 games up until the Stanley Cup, and they only lost 2 games in it. So I think it was a hard-fought series. It was the best series that hockey could have had. I know we talked about that too, but it was the best part of it in the storylines I just talked about. Colorado, building themselves through the draft. I think that's what a lot of teams in a lot of sports try to do. I think we see that in football. Basketball, we see that too, and a lot of teams can't do it. There's a lot of teams that have been trying to do it for decades, at least 1 decade, to half a decade, 2 decades. So it's hard to do. You got to draft right, and I think they did that. Like I said, bringing in Cale McCarr, who's only 23, and this guy, he just won a Conn Smythe. He won some other awards too. And he has ability to be the best player on this team and the best player in the game, in at least defenseman wise. So they have a lot going for Colorado. I think building through draft's tough. Like I said, this is a team that was dead last 5 years ago, and look what we just had basketball too. We just had Golden State. They just 2 years ago. I know they had injuries, and they, you can't help that stuff, but they, record wise that matters. And they were worse in the league. So these 2 champs we've had in basketball and hockey that play, this time of year have their championships. Both of them had their struggles, and both of them, like I said, Golden State's another team that both their draft with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and some other guys they have. I know you have to make key trades. Colorado did that along the way. They picked up some good guys along the deadline that really helped them on this run. So, like I said, I think this is a team that can go on another run. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this matchup again in the future with Tampa Bay and Colorado. But I think Colorado, they're young. Like I said, boning through a draft, so they're young. They just got their experience. They went through all the pain last year, a couple years of losing in the second round. They haven't made it out of the second round until this year. So getting that experience this year, not only getting the Stanley Cup but winning it, that's going to help them a lot. And I think it's going to put them in a situation with Tampa Bay that, although they didn't win it this year and they didn't come back from the 3-1 deficit, they still had a position where, or you still had that in your mind, like, hey, they've been through all these situations, so don't count them out. I think after Game 5 on Friday, when they won on the road to make it 3-2, a lot of people were saying, hey, this is very possible they come back and win the series from 3-1 because of the experience they have. Just every situation they've been in, I think that's going to help Colorado too, because although they didn't really get challenged too much in this postseason, they still had to get there. And it's still hard to win the Stanley Cup. And I think that experience sticks with anybody, whether it's the path, the strength of the path is different, high or low, if it's too hard or too easy. It's never too easy. It's the hardest trophy to win in sports, and they did it last night. So, like I said, hats off to Colorado. It was a great series, and now we're done. Dog days of summer are ahead of us. We got baseball coming up. We're going to talk about that a little bit soon, but I want to move over to the NBA draft because we weren't here Friday to talk about it. So, a little bit of a surprise at number 1 with, I won't say shocking, but a little bit of surprise with Paolo Banchero going number 1 because a lot of people rejected him to go 3rd. A lot of people thought it was either between Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith to go number 1 to the Magic. But it wasn't. So they found the guy in Paolo Banchero. I think is a great pick for them. He's a guy that can be, the Magic have had luck picking number 1, although they haven't kept their guys that they've picked throughout the history with number one is in, like Dwight Howard and Shaq. But um, this is a guy that we saw in the tournament that played very well for Duke. A lot of people were talking at the beginning of the year of him being a number one pick, but obviously throughout the college season things change. So he went number one. Chet Holmgren went number two. I like that pick for OKC. I think they had a great draft. I think between them and Detroit, I think they both had maybe the most solid drafts. I don't know if I'd say best. It's hard to really say who had the best draft, but I think that those two teams are up there in terms of being the most solid. I like Chet Holmgren going number two to OKC. I think it's a good pick for them. I think next couple years they already have young talent. All the young picks or all the early picks we've been talking about, they've been acquiring over the last couple years. I think they could really build something special there. I think getting Chet's a good start. I think that with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey, who was a rookie their candidate, they could build something there as well. Then number three, Jabari Smith. Like I said, people were projecting him. A lot of mock drafts I was looking at was him going number one. He goes number three to Houston. I think they're another team that you could say a lot about these teams that are picking number one or picking in the top 5, 6, or 7 that they can maybe do something. But I like what Houston has with Jalen Green going last year. They have some other pieces like I was talking to Matt about last week about Kevin Porter Jr., who was with the Cavs. That it's the same story when he was in Cleveland. Now he's with Houston. If he can get his I don't want to say act together, but if he could straighten up his mindset a little bit or however you want to point to it, that he can be a good piece for them. And I think Houston, it's not too long. I know they were good for a while. So I don't think it's gonna be too long until they're at least competing for playoff spots. So I like Jabari Smith going number 3 to them. Keegan Murray, I think, is a good pick for Sacramento. I think that, they were a team that just came to my mind when I was talking about with Colorado, how they were, 5 years ago, they were worst team in the league point wise, and they built through their draft and they did it pretty quick, like I said, in 5 years. So Sacramento was a team that came to my mind when I was talking about that because, the last time they're in playoffs has been like 15, close to 20 years, and they've been building through the draft for a long time, and they just haven't been able to get in. So I think Keegan Murray's a good pick for them. I think, he's another guard. I know they're kind of a guard-heavy team. They didn't need another big after they got Sabonis at the deadline last year. They actually kind of needed another guard because they lost Tyrese Halliburton in that trade and Buddy Hield. So I think Keegan Murray's going to be a good pick for them. And then number 5, Jaden Ivey. That's my favorite pick. I think, like I said, with OKC and Detroit, who just picked Jaden Ivey at 5, I think the Pistons and the Thunder had the 2 best drafts. I think Detroit, I think Jaden Ivey, however you want to play him and Cade Cunningham together, have one at the point guard, have one at the shooting guard, reverse it, whatever. I think they're both going to play pretty good together. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be a good fit for Detroit. I think they still need another draft or two to really get a good nucleus, like teams like the Cavs have had, or teams like Golden State back in the day when they drafted Steph and Clay a couple years later, and then Draymond a year or two later. I think they need another year or two to get another year or two draft wise to really put something together. But they get to start, especially in their front court or back court with Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and then Benedict McThorne to the Pacers. I think I like what they're building too. The good return they got in that Sabonis trade with Halliburton and Buddy Hield, so we'll see how that goes. A couple other picks that I really liked. I'm trying to get down to the list here. I like Jeremy Sochan. I think that's how you pronounce his last name of the Spurs. I think that's a good pick for them. Johnny Davis is a guy. I knew he wasn't going to be there at 14 for the Cavs to pick, but I knew whoever was going to get him. I think he's a good pick for anybody. And I think, he fell down to the Wizards. They're another team that's been building the last couple of years. I know they've been in the playoffs, last 5, 6 years. They haven't been, but before that, they were making it a lot with John Wall and Bradley Beal. But they're a team the last couple of years that's been in this position where they're having these 9th, 10 picks, and they're not, they're getting good players, but it's hard to get a good nucleus together. I think they're another team next couple of years, maybe even this year, that could compete for a playoff spot because they started out this past year really hot. They did. Remember, they started out pretty good, and then they had a bad fall off. We were, early in the year, so that's a good pick for them. Johnny Davis, I like that one. I'm going down here. Obviously, I got to bring up the Cavs because I do like them getting Ochai Agbaji. He was a guy that I talked about. I think Thursday, Thursday, whatever day we were on last week, me and Matt, before the draft. I know we weren't here post draft, but before that, I was either saying I wanted the Cavs to either draft somebody that was, experienced in college, maybe not really a young guy that's been there for 1 or 2 years, because I think they're in a place where, you have your young nucleus now. I think you need to get some guys that are experienced either in the college or in the pros that you can 3-and-D type guys. That's what they need, and I think that's what they're getting in Ochai Agbaji. I do love the fact that when I'm looking at these prospects, I know it doesn't happen that much anymore, but I normally like when, a guy's been in college for like 2-3 years. I know that doesn't happen that much, but Agbaji's been there 4 years. They showed When he got selected by the Cavs, they showed a whole graphic about how, at least point wise and 3 point percentage wise, he's gotten better every single year he's been in Kansas. And then this year, his final year there, he wins a national championship. I like that. That's winner mindset that he has. That he's gotten better every single year. He wasn't a huge recruit coming out of high school. He actually was mid-major recruits, and then Kansas looked at him and they brought him in. So I like what Cleveland's going to be getting in him. I think I'll talk about them a little bit here since we're on the subject, and that's our team. That I think that they're a point where they have a 3-and-D guy like him. He's not necessarily a shot creator, but he can play off the ball. He can spot up and shoot. He can plays good defense, like I said, 3-and-D guy. So I think that's a big part for them because I think they're past the point where, and I think the holes left on their roster. By the way, I do like them getting Evan Mobley's brother. I don't know how much he's going to play if he does, but I think he's a good guy to, at least in the backup part of their rotation, to add some size to their front court. I know their starting lineup they're okay with Jared Allen and Mobley, and even Markkanen if you throw in there if he stays in the starting lineup. That part of their rotation they're okay with size wise, but I think it showed last year with when Allen was hurt and when Mobley got hurt, some other guys would be dinged up on their size front. That with Moses Brown, he played okay coming in, but that's not the guy that you want. I don't know if they're gonna keep him. I don't think they are. With some other guys too, I think Ed Davis, he's probably not gonna be back as well. So they had to, at least their backup point, the backup part of the rotation with forwards and centers that they needed to beef it up. And I think they still can do that free agency wise. I still think they can maybe get one more for their rotation on their bench size wise. I don't know who's out there going to be available. I haven't looked at that yet. But I think drafting Isaiah Mobley is a good start for that. And I think the one other guy that drafted before him, I can't remember his name. I beg your pardon for not remembering it. But I think they did a good job overall building, getting their draft picks here. I think they got who they wanted. I think Abaji was a guy they really did want at 14. I think they liked his workout, they were saying. So that was a good part there. And then, like I said, drafting some other guys size-wise later in the rounds. I think that's good. And then, the one hole left on the roster that they do need to address for sure, because they don't have one right now, is a backup point guard. And I know there's a lot of talk about Ricky Rubio. Me and Matt have talked about it on the show as well. I would like to have him back. I think, they definitely need, if they're going to pack a point guard, which they need to, it's got to be somebody experienced. I think that worked last year with Rubio, and I know Rondo wasn't as effective as Rubio was, but at least having that guy behind the younger point guards, younger guards in general, it helps. And the thing about Rubio is I want him back, don't get me wrong, but he's not going to be ready till like January. You got to remember this guy tore his ACL. That's a hard injury to come back from. We see it in all sports. It's hard to come back from. Me and Alec have talked about it. He's had ACL injuries before. I've had knee injuries before, not ACL tears, but it's still hard to come back from that type of stuff. So we'll see the route they go. It's, we still got a long way to go here. All these rumors are starting with NBA free agency. We saw that. I'll talk about the Kyrie Irving stuff too as well. Is he going to be back in Brooklyn? Is he going to be out on the West Coast? That's an interesting story there to watch. And I think as that unfolds, I don't think it's as big a deal as everybody's talking about because, the Nets haven't really said they don't want to sign him. That's just the big thing. It's the money part of it. It's the lengthwise because we know the last couple of years Kyrie has not been available as he should be, being one of the best players in the league, one of the second best player on the team outside of Kevin Durant. So he's going to make himself more available if he wants what he wants in terms of years and money. But if they can't figure that out, and he wants to sign and trade he gave the list of the teams that he'd want the Nets to look into if they were to do some type of sign and trade or whatever. So then we'll see what happens with Kevin Durant. So I think that's a good situation to follow. Well, obviously the situation with if he ends up going to the Lakers, Kyrie Irving, let's say if he does, because that's one of the teams he was interested in. What happens with that? And if he doesn't go there and all this stuff keeps happening, the Lakers keep going backwards, what does LeBron want? So there's a lot of good things to watch this offseason. There's not a huge amount of, high-profile free agents that are going to be available, but, free agency is always fun to watch. We'll see what teams do to even defending champs like Golden State. You often see with defending champs, they don't have many things to address, obviously, but, who are they going to lose? Who are they going to bring in? Who are some other teams that competed last year that are going to be losing guys, bringing guys in? Who are some teams that were on the come up last year, like Cleveland or Minnesota or some other teams like that? What are they going to lose? What are they going to bring in? So that's a good part to watch. And also, going into the young teams last year, which ones had a good year last year? Which ones are going to think, highly of themselves and start out sluggish? So, and we saw it last year with Atlanta going to the conference finals and starting out sluggish. So It's NBA offseason is a fun thing to keep track of. I think it could be busy in certain years, but like I said, I don't know how many high profile free agents there are this year, but we'll keep an eye on it. And I think it's sometimes more entertaining than some parts of the actual season itself and some parts of the trade deadline. So in terms of the drama, because the last couple of years there's been so much drama with players that they don't want to play with this person, they don't want to play here, they want this money, they want this many years. So it's fun to watch the free agency, and I think we'll keep an eye on that now that the draft's over. But the thing that came to my mind too is, at least for the Cavs part of it, now the draft's over. I want to see what jerseys they get now, what kind of cool jerseys they get. So we'll see about that too. But now the draft's over, we can we're actually in the off season now. It's only been a week or so since the finals ended. So draft's behind us. Now let's see what happens for free agency. So we'll keep an eye on that stuff too as well. I don't know what time we have left, but I'm gonna try to get into some baseball here. So last week we were talking about certain points of the week. Last week the Scrappers had a 6-game homestand. We'll talk a little bit Scrappers and we'll get into major leagues as well, and then we'll see where we're at then. But they had a rough homestand. They came home last week after. Let me pull up their schedule. They came home after losing, I think. If I'm trying to find it, I think they lost 1 of 5 out of the 6 they played on the road before they came home last week, or maybe they got swept. I don't really remember. Let me see. It's not coming up, but anyway, yeah, I think they believe they lost 1 of 5, or they won 1 of 6 games, so they went 1 of 5 on the road trip. Came home this homestand for the 6-game homestand against Trenton and Williamsport, who the team that they were battling out with first place. They got swept by Trenton. I think it wasn't really too close. I know that there was a few games that started out with like a 1-run lead or 2-run lead. Trenton came right back, and I think the big thing is the Scrappers pitching has not been as good as it was to start the season. It wasn't great because a lot of those games they were beating against West Virginia. I know the first series, the opening series, it was a 4-game set. Then they went on the road against State College, and they came back to play West Virginia again. Especially those games against West Virginia, they were trailing some of those games, and they came back to win. So the pitching really hasn't been great, but especially in the last 2-3 series, it has not been good at all. Like I said, Trenton swept them, so there were some pretty high scoring games as well. The Williamsport series, there were also some high scoring games in that 3-game set. And I know they lost the first 2, and the last one on Saturday night they came back. Actually, they won that one pretty handily. I know it ended up being 15-8, so it was a little bit closer than it was. But I was there for most of the game. They were up pretty big, and there wasn't really too much doubt that they were going to blow it. But that was a big series that they struggled with. And Williamsport, like I said, coming into it, the Scrappers were in first place. Williamsport was a team behind them, trailing them by, I think it was 2 games coming in, or game and a half or something like that coming in. So Williamsport took 2 out of 1 on the road, and they did their part. Now they have a game and a half lead over the Scrappers. They're 12-8. The Scrappers now at 11-10. So the Scrappers got that win to stay over 500. They haven't been under 500 all year, but it's just kind of, I know that's the way this league works, but they start out 4-0, or no, actually 6-0 or 7-0 or something like that. So starting that well, and then coming home and beating West Virginia again, sweeping them to come to 10-2, I think it was, to go on that road trip. Then they go on that road trip, come home, and between both of those, they go 11-10 out of this. That's their overall record now. So I know that's part of this league because you lose guys. I know it's most of the guys there in their lineup still are guys that they started the season with. Some guys actually were here last year too as well. But it's not an excuse, but it's just the way this league works because it's more of development, just trying to teach these guys. It's not necessarily a league that you want to win in because you just want to teach these young guys who are trying to get drafted, who are coming out of high school, at colleges, trying to get drafted. But you still want to win, don't get me wrong, but that's not the main focus. And that's just a tough part when you're losing guys, groups of guys in certain points of the year. We got the draft coming up next month, or this month coming up in the middle of July. So we'll see what guys they lose in that, either get drafted or guys that get shipped off somewhere else. That's a tough part of it. You just don't always know, who you're going to have for like 3 weeks, who you're going to have for a couple weeks, because I think every 3 or 4 weeks the rosters change. It's just hard to get any consistency going. So, but I think right now, for as bad as they were on that road trip and most of this homestand, besides that last game they won, it's you're being 11-10. You're only a game and a half out of first place. That's pretty good because, like I said, the way this league works is if um, if you win the first half of the season, I think it goes to where the draft is. That's the first half. If you win that first half, you're going to be hosting the championship, the one game championship for this league. So the Scrappers are still in position to get that back. Like I said, the game and a half out. They're going to have more games against Williamsport. I think now they're going to be in State College, I believe. Let me see. They're actually off. They were off yesterday. They're going to be off today again. I think to travel. But they're going to be actually back in playing Trenton. So they're going to be in Trenton. It'd be nice to get a little bit of payback for them. They roughed us up at our place, so it'd be nice to give them a little payback at their place. And that's a team that is in third place. They're actually behind us. So a couple of big series coming up for the Scrappers with Trenton and then Williamsport. And then they come home against State College team they've already played. So they've played these three teams already. Then they got West Virginia after that. Then you get in the part where you're playing pretty much every other series. They're playing State College and West Virginia for like 3 weeks. And then they play Frederick again, who a team that they did not play well against on that road trip. So, I know there's only 5 other teams in this league, not counting them, that, it's a small league, but there's some important games coming up for them that they need to rebound against these teams that rough them up. And, I'm looking at this road trip now. They won the first one against Frederick, then lost every other game on that road trip, and then come back home and lose every game except the last one. So they got to rebound too, and I think they can. I think their players and Homer Bush, who is a positive guy. I've listened to some of his interviews that Richie's done on this network. He knows it's more about development, but they don't get him wrong. He wants to win, so I think they're in a spot where they can try to get back into things here. So we'll get out of Scrappers here. We'll touch a little bit on Major League Baseball, and then we'll see how long that gets us. We're half hour into the show already. I'll start with Matt and Alex's team, the Guardians, because I know last week Matt was all excited, and rightfully so, about the way they were playing on that road trip with Colorado, and I think the Dodgers, and then the Twins, and maybe another team in there too as well. But they had that great road trip, and I think coming home, I was telling Matt last week that this is what my concern was with them, because if I'm a fan of them, my main concern is the way that their offense struggles. And I think it did. This last series against the Red Sox, they just got swept in it. They didn't score more than 3 runs in one of those 3 games, and I think that's a big part of my concern, is because you come home on a road trip that you played really well, and you played tough teams, the Dodgers and the Twins, who you did overtake for a brief period there, that you were scoring runs against, and you come home against the Red Sox, who are starting to find themselves again in this division in the AL East, and you come home and you don't score more than 3 runs and you don't win a game. That's a concern, and I think. Now they're back out of first place. Minnesota took the lead, I think, back by a game and a half or something like that. So that's something you don't want to happen. And I think that's happened a few times with them, and a few times with my team, and a few times with other teams where you have great road trips. You start to get excited, especially for a team like Cleveland that has a young core, and people are getting excited because the young players they have, players they didn't expect much out of. They're Jose Ramirez having a great year he has been having, and they come home and they lose. I think it's tough to, not support your team. I don't want to say that, but it's tough, from a standpoint of a fan, like, hey, what are we doing? We just had this, I know you're going to lose games, but you come home after everybody's getting excited, new team with a new name, all these young guys, everything that's involved in it, and they come home and lose. But I think they got 5 games this week against the Twins, a team that just beat, and to try to make up for losing these 3 games against the Red Sox to try to get back in first place. And this is a team you want to do it against because it's a team you're chasing against the Twins. And, 5 games, I think it's Wednesday they have a doubleheader. So, yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's doubleheader, and then Thursday they play. So I think there's a total of 5 games in there somewhere. Then after that, they play the Yankees this weekend. I'm actually going to be trying to go to one of those games with my buddy Chris, if you're watching. He's a Yankee fan, so we'll be trying to go to one of those games. And that's another tough team that's coming in. I know they're getting in the middle part towards the end of that stretch we talked about, these tough teams that are coming up, but they're still going to be continuing. And this is part of the summer where you got to win these games in June and July, because that's when things really start to heat up and teams separate themselves. So if they want to separate themselves and try to get back into first place, if not get back into first place, still stay in contention for wild card, because I think it's going to be a good battle. I think they're definitely capable of winning this division, but I think it's more likely, if I was a betting guy, they're going to be a wild card team. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I think coming into the year, I'm not a fan of this team, but I know Matt was definitely saying, if I take, if they get a wild card, because they have the extra one this year with a third wild card in each league, he would take that. And I think I would take that too, is not only because my team never makes the playoffs, but, and normally when they were, the last couple years, it was the wild card and I didn't like it, but at least just get in. That's the big thing. At least just get in and try to get yourselves a chance. And I think the way they're playing, like I said, I don't like the inconsistency that they play with, but if they can get in, they get hot. We talk about with every other sport, if you get in, give yourselves a chance. If you go into the playoffs playing your best baseball, hockey, basketball, whatever we were talking about, playing your best ball, you give yourself a chance to win. So I think we'll see what they do tonight and for until Thursday with the series against the Twins. So we'll keep an eye on that one. I think we'll talk about that too as the other two get back on the show and talk about their team. But we'll talk a little about the Yankees because I know it's a team that they're going to be playing at the end of this week. They actually had a little bit of a rough patch, and something we haven't talked about with the Yankees that much because they've record-wise, consistency-wise, they've been the best team all year. They had a combined no-hitter against the Astros on Saturday, I believe. I don't remember the guys that were in the combined no-hitter. I'm going to try to look it up here. But they had yesterday, going back to that game on Saturday, I'm pulling it up here. Christian Javier, I think, was one of the pitchers that. But anyway, on Saturday with that no hitter for the combined no hitter for the Astros, and then for a good part of yesterday's game, they were actually hitless. The Yankees were, but they ended up coming back to win it, and it's something you really don't see at least this year with their lineup that they go hitless for a long period of time. Just at least being no hit, and then for half of another game being so that's about rough, give or take 14 innings, 15 innings that they didn't have a hit, and you don't see that with the Yankees, especially playing at home, and that place they're comfortable hitting in the short porch that they play in Yankee Stadium. So you don't see that too much from the Yankees, but they got the win anyways. That take that more than anything. And then we'll talk a little about my team. I know they got swept over the weekend, but it's just the part that I've been talking about with them bringing up young guys is that all three of the games they played against Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay is a really good team. I don't think, at least in my opinion, I don't think that they're a World Series contender, but they're definitely a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot this year. I'm going to try to check the standings here. I know they're one of the better teams in the AL East they have in the last couple of years. They won the division last year, but I'm trying to see where they're at here. Yeah, so the third place right now. Boston took it over the weekend. I know they both had sweeps, but going into it, Boston was in front of them by a half game or a game and a half. So, but yeah, with Tampa and Pittsburgh, it was, I wish I don't want to be swept. Don't get me wrong, but it's what I've been saying all year with these young guys they keep bringing up is that, you're gonna have your hiccups. You're gonna play good in games. You're gonna play bad in games. We saw last week at the beginning of the week, dominated the Cubs outside of that one game. Bringing up Elnio Cruz and Bly Madris and guys like that. We'll see if guys are getting healthy. We'll see who they keep and send back down as roster moves happen and during this week. But all those games they had a chance to win. I think Friday they lost by a run. Saturday they had the lead 5-3 for most of the game, and then they lost it in the ninth. And then yesterday, same thing. They lose by 2 runs, and they were for most of the game it was 1-1 game. So. It's not anything to get discouraged about because you're playing a team, like I said, with Tampa, who won the division last year. 2 years ago was in the World Series. I don't think this year they're a title contender, but we'll see if they get in. Like I said, you just got to get in sometimes. But, yeah, it's just Tampa's a good team right now. I think Pittsburgh can be a good team in a couple years, but right now, Tampa's clearly better than them. And I think, when you're playing teams that are close games, you got to capitalize on it if you're a young team trying to win those games when they're close games. And if you give them the other team, you wait around, give the other team more chances to score and take the lead, they're going to do it. And that's what Tampa Bay did. So we'll see this week. They got a big road trip coming up, I think, with well, not big, but a long one with the Reds and can't remember some of the other teams as well. I just looked at it the other day, but with the Reds coming up, I think the Marlins are in there somewhere. Let me see. Yeah, with the Nationals to start this week. this team. I thought it was the Reds for some reason, but the Nationals for 3, who a team that, at least record wise, is worse than Pittsburgh. And I know it's hard to do, but at least they're worse than them record wise. I know Josh Bell's having a great year. He's hitting around 300 or a little bit over 300, so he's having a good year for them. Then Brewers this weekend, off for 4th of July. Then they have the Yankees coming in for 2 games. Then the Reds, like I was looking after the Yankee series. So then they have the Reds, at the Brewers, at the Marlins, and at the Rockies in the All-Star break. It's hard to believe the All-Star break's coming up, honestly, in at least under a month, really. But and I think the fan balloting is open to go vote for your favorite players for All-Star. So if you haven't voted, go ahead. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. And I think this is it with baseball. We're gonna be talking about this a lot because hockey just wrapped up last night. Basketball just had the draft and the NBA Finals last week. The Warriors won, so maybe we'll talk. Like I said, with free agency coming up, we'll talk about that a little bit as well. I'm sure the other two want to have their thoughts on the Cavs pick at least, and then some reactions to the other picks, maybe that they were caught off guard by. So we'll see when they come in as well. But that's pretty much all I had for you guys today. We're going to wrap up a little bit early today. Today was going to be a short show. I think tomorrow, Matt is going to be on tomorrow, I think. And like I said, I think Alec had the 3 links. I think he's going to be back Thursday, maybe Friday. So he's going to be back at some point. Like I said, we're all going to be on vacations coming up. Last week me and Matt had a big week working for the Scrappers. It's more of their jobs as well. But so we'll see. Like I said, they play tomorrow night. We'll see. I like to keep an eye on them when on the road because I like to see not only if they win games, but I'm working for them, so I want to keep up and see how well they play and some of these other teams as well. I think it's an interesting league. I'm still trying to understand it. So, but like I said, Matt, he'll be on tomorrow. We'll be shuffling in and out next week. I'll be on vacation. Matt will be on the vacation the week after that. So, and we got the holiday coming up, so we may have to. Somebody will be here at least. So today was a short one. Like I said, Matt will be back tomorrow. But thanks for listening today with me, guys.